Imagine a bustling city, alive with the holiday spirit, when suddenly the ground begins to tremble beneath your feet.
Wow, that sounds terrifying. What happened on that day?
On December 26, 2010, a magnitude 4.7 earthquake struck Christchurch, New Zealand, right under the city center.
It was part of a devastating earthquake sequence that began a few months earlier and changed the fate of the city.
That's incredible. How did the local businesses cope with the unexpected disaster?
Many businesses had to halt their Boxing Day sales, but they creatively reran those promotions just weeks later to make up for the lost revenue.
And this was just the beginning of a series of seismic events that would devastate the area. But we'll get into that later.
Just a few months prior, on September 4, 2010, an earthquake with a magnitude of 7.1 shook the region, recording the largest ground shaking ever documented in New Zealand.
That's mind-blowing. What kind of damage did that cause?
It resulted in widespread destruction and numerous aftershocks.
The Boxing Day earthquake was just one of many aftershocks, but its impact would prove significant, setting the stage for what was to come.
The Boxing Day earthquake hit at 10:30 a.m., with its epicenter located near Barbados Street.
Because it was so shallow, did that mean the shaking felt more intense?
Exactly. Though it was a lower magnitude, the shallow depth led to powerful ground shaking, primarily affecting central Christchurch.
Notably, this earthquake triggered a swarm of seismic activity, with dozens of earthquakes following closely behind.
Wow, how many did they record?
There were over 30 within just a few weeks, some of which were quite significant themselves.
It brought the total to nearly 17 major tremors since the sequence began. The bewildering part? It didn't even occur on the same fault line as the earlier quakes.
So it wasn't technically an aftershock?
That's correct. It's a loose classification at best, but it was very much influenced by the earlier seismic activity.
The damage from the Boxing Day earthquake was substantial, particularly to structures already weakened by earlier quakes.
How bad was it? Were there many injuries?
Fortunately, there were no reported injuries, but the destruction to buildings was significant. Many showed signs of distress, impacting businesses and residential areas alike.
Over 3,000 buildings were assessed shortly after the quake.
And how many needed repairs?
About 115 required immediate attention. The damage was particularly severe in places like Cashel Mall, where walls collapsed and debris fell onto shops.
If those businesses had been open, the consequences could have been disastrous.
Amazing that no one was injured. What was the community's response like?
Shortly after the earthquake struck, chaos ensued as shoppers were evacuated from local malls and emergency services responded to around 200 calls.
That must have been chaotic. What about structural safety?
Concerns grew around the stability of buildings, leading to cordons around the most affected areas.
These were eventually lifted, but the immediate response revealed the city's vulnerability.
With so many people shopping for Boxing Day, what happened to the local economy?
The earthquake caused a 10.7% drop in electronic transactions in Christchurch compared to the previous year, which was a substantial blow to retailers.
They had to get creative to recover from these setbacks, with efforts like rerunning the Boxing Day sales in February, which brought together community support and government funding.
That's resourceful. What about New Year's Eve celebrations?
Initially in jeopardy due to safety concerns, the celebrations eventually took place in Cathedral Square after assessments deemed it safe.
It was a small, yet significant victory for the community, but the aftermath of the earthquakes would continue to unfold.
So much to unpack from this. I can't wait to learn more about what happened next.